In this video, we're going to be going over the only sales metrics that you need to track to get to 30K per month with your business. Now, a lot of agency owners that I coach fall into one of two buckets before we start working together. Number one, they're not tracking their sales numbers. They're just staring at the Stripe dashboard all day, seeing the graph go like this, wondering why there's no consistency. Or number two, they're drowning in data, when honestly, at this point, most of it's relevant. So by the end of this video, we're going to make sure that you are neither of those people. And if you haven't been here before, my name is Dan Crowley. I'm one of the co-founders at Ascension Listget, where I lead sales teams that currently do over $1 million a month combined. Now, I've taken thousands of sales calls myself, still take sales calls today, built killer sales processes, and help clients like you go from struggling to smashing revenue goals, some hitting over 100K a month in under a year. But plenty of clients start from scratch or sub 10K a month that work with us. So let's get into it. Point one, not tracking your sales numbers is gross negligence. And vanity tracking is honestly just as bad. There's this quote from Peter Drucker that says, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Now, I know some of you are thinking, hey, Dan, the reason why I started a business is so I didn't need a manager. But the hard truth is that you are your first sales manager. If you're not tracking your sales numbers, you are a shitty manager. That's a problem. Now, even if you are tracking, make sure you're not doing vanity tracking, because I've seen a lot of business owners, salespeople track pipeline value and obsess over that, or only track their qualified close rate, thinking that's a path to real growth when it's not. The danger of vanity tracking is that it serves your ego, not your company, which a good manager, which is going to be you, wouldn't want you to do that. So no. So here's what to focus on. First things first, when you're this small, time is your biggest asset. Less tracking, more selling. If you're spending hours analyzing stats, naturally, you can't be spending those hours selling. I've learned this the hard way at my first agency, and I think this is quite common when you first start a business and you've never started a business before, because I run two businesses now. I've had 3 businesses get to 6 figures a month. I've had 5 businesses get to over 30K a month. That first business, you're just naturally in this ideation phase where you're writing out a business plan. You're like, well, the market share is this big. If I could just capture 1% of that, and you're not actually doing anything, right? The quicker you can get out of that ideation phase and just start selling whenever you've got time, the quicker you're going to start scaling. It really is that simple. Like, I don't know anyone who's ever done tons of outreach, done tons of cold calling, tons of follow-up, who has not signed a client. And then you find these people, and we work with a lot of them, who come in saying, Dan, I've never signed a client. I've tried this, I've tried that. And you can just simply ask them, have you sent tens of thousands of cold emails? Have you sent hundreds of personalized DMs? Have you done thousands of cold calls? Have you posted content on YouTube, content on LinkedIn, content on Twitter? And they're going to say no. Where it's just like sometimes the simple answer is the correct one. Just do more outreach, sell more, pick up the phone, go knock on somebody's door. Like, it's really not that difficult. It's very straightforward. It just honestly takes effort. So get selling. Now, simplest way to look at this at this stage, you have lead generation, you have sales. Now, this would be a good example of what tracking your lead generation would look like. You're simply just focusing on your inputs and calls booked. So if I'm looking at all these different channels, okay, I have cold email, I have Dream 100, I have YouTube, I have LinkedIn, I have content, LinkedIn outreach, LinkedIn content, cold calling, and then I just have the outputs, right? How many calls booked are coming from each of those things. And I set my goals here, cool. I make sure that I'm staying consistent week over week, cool. Same thing with the goals. And a lot of this is just like throwing darts at a dartboard and just seeing what sticks to start. And I'm going to talk about like how you're not going to have this be an exact science. It's not always going to look this pretty, but you should be super serious about your inputs, right? You should be treating yourself as your sales manager, and you should be fucking do or die about whatever you commit to each and every month. But it's not an exact science. Now, when it comes to sales, this is about as simple as I can do it. And guys, before this video, I literally took like 5 minutes to just go into Google Sheets and make both these. And I wanted to make it super simple for a reason, because you don't need like a fancy tracking software. Honestly, with sales numbers, I don't like tracking it within my CRM. There gets all these like weird complications where it's like, okay, it's also counting a second call as a first call when it shouldn't be. This should only be like unique calls with unique prospects. You shouldn't be counting a second call inside of here. Offers are kind of hard to track. And then there's just a lot of stuff that goes on. Just keep it in Google Sheets. In fact, I've talked to some of our clients that are doing multiple 6 figures a month where they're like, yeah, Dan, I've kind of found the same thing. Like, the more I try to stress over it and make this like all native into my CRM, it was just more of a pain in the ass. So we just reverted back to Google Sheets. So stay here and like start here and stay here, honestly. And with the sales metrics, this is essentially just what happens when you do get that output that you want, which is calls booked. Now, clarity is going to beat complexity here. You don't need a dashboard with 50 data points. That's why all these are so simple. You see, this is pretty much just like inputs. What is it leading to? Cool. This is just scheduled calls, live calls, offers, closes, cash collected. And then all the other stuff just comes out with the formulas here. And you will need that at some point. Yes, like you're going to need to track more metrics. You're going to want to track your cost per call, your cost per acquisition, especially when you start going to paid, your net revenue retention, your sales cycle length. But to start, simplicity will allow you to act with speed. All of your metrics are like a chain. If things aren't working, you just need to find the broken link and fix it. Now, when you're at this stage, your sales process shouldn't be that complex. So naturally, smaller chain, less links, which makes the iteration process easier. You need to get good in sales and in business at just finding how to problem solve, iterate, find the broken link, fix it, and then just do it all over again. So don't make the number of links overly complicated when it doesn't need to be, right? The metrics I'm talking about today are literally the only ones you're going to need to track to scale to 30K a month plus, and oftentimes to multiple six figures per month with a high ticket offer. So quick call to action, quick pause in the action. If you're an agency owner under 30K a month, frustrated with low close rates on cold traffic, I've got something for you. Client Ascension has helped countless businesses like yours hit 40% close rates and higher with proven sales systems that I've used myself to do the exact same thing. Just like my client Cam, who hit 65K a month just recently. Click the link below if you want to learn more about how Client Ascension can help you scale an AI assisted agency. Now let's get back to the steps. Point 2, schedule calls are your North Star for lead generation. So you saw it's pretty simple. It's like the inputs on each channel and how many calls are scheduled. Don't track much more than that. If you're sub 30K a month, double down on outbound and content. Now, I'm a big fan of outbound. I'm a big fan of paid media. I'm a big fan of content. But if you're sub 30K a month, don't go run into paid media. The reason why it's not going to work is because naturally it's going to cost you, let's say $300, $400, $500 to get a real good qualified call. Can you be a little bit less? Absolutely. Now, if you were looking to get a call a day and it's $300 cost per call, you're gonna need to spend $1,500 on ads right off the bat. Usually it's a little bit too much. It's too high of a percentage of your revenue. And also because you're not that great of a marketer yet, because you don't probably have the best sales process yet, you're probably better off using these channels that rely more on sweat equity and are more cost effective to start. Even today, we get most of our deals now, or a lot of our deals from paid media, but the outbound ones always have a lower customer acquisition cost. It just doesn't have that same velocity, but under 30K a month, outbound content, really all you need. Now, if you're not doing the work and you're not getting the results you want because of it, you have to have ownership. Like you literally have no one to blame but yourself. If you have a lead channel that is working, double down on it. Most of our case studies get 80% of their leads from one channel, but they've tried them all. And it's not an exact science like I talked about. And you're really just not gonna know which channel is the winning one for you until you do them all. That's just how it works, to be honest with you. The KPI for book calls is always more. Like you're always competing against yourself the previous month. Get as many opportunities as you can. You should never get to a point where you have to build up a wait list or you feel like you need to stop selling. Like always keep your foot on the gas. Figure it out or find a partner that can figure out on the fulfillment side if you need to. So let's break this down so you can stack your calendar. 1, target a specific number. Even though it's not an exact science, and like I said, it's kind of like throwing darts at a dartboard, the goalpost is always going to keep moving, yes, but don't just guess. Even if you're just getting started, say I want 10 calls from cold email, I want this many calls from cold calling, I want this many calls from LinkedIn, I want this many calls from YouTube, and then just reverse engineer what you think the inputs are going to be and make a strong verbal commitment with yourself, your manager, and treat your inputs like they are life or death, but be a little bit more relaxed and analytical with the outputs. It's business. It's not always going to be perfect. Now, content. Really, the name of the game there is just consistency and shooting from the hip. You guys probably noticed I post once a week. I'm going to stay very, very consistent on this channel. At the same time, all of the guys I know that absolutely crush it with content, it's not always just them fitting this into a pretty little content schedule. If they have some shit they want to put out in the world, they just do it. They're not white knuckling all their thoughts and just saying, okay, but I can only post one a week. No, like Daniel will oftentimes just go out on a rant and just post a YouTube video. And sometimes those are his best ones. So TLDR on the content side specifically, you need to be consistent because the guys who are as big as you want to be have been doing it for years. And at the same time, like just put shit out there. Don't worry too much about everything fitting into this neat little schedule. Sources matter. Like I talked about, most of our clients, most of our case studies get the majority of their leads from one specific channel. And it's because not all channels are created equal. Right? You can close leads from every channel if you're good enough, which is why you're on this channel, to get good enough at sales to be able to do that. However, different entrepreneurs, different offers will do better on specific platforms. And at the bare minimum, just track the calls and closes by source and just analyze it. I mean, at least once a month. But don't ask me what is the best for your offer. Like what's the best source for my offer and I do this. Like you just have to try them all yourself. That's it. Now, for sales, close rate and cash collected are your North Star. Show rate is a sales metric, not a marketing metric. So that's the first one that I'm going to talk about is how do I actually get people to show up to my calls? First off, your pre-call sequence should be automated. So you're not doing this all yourself. And it should be sent from your email, not your CRM. So don't just send it from Calendly, set it up inside of your CRM. So it's being sent from your email, the one that's on the calendar invite. And the pre-call emails are pretty straightforward. The first goal is just to get them to accept the invite, especially from cold traffic. It is wild how strong of a correlation it is between people accepting the invite and showing up in the meeting and how strong of a negative correlation it is to people not accepting the invite and no showing on you. And the second thing there is just consuming your pre-call material. Consumption is key. We want to build trust here. So that's what all of the other pre-call material should be focused on. So familiarizing them with your offer is important. Sales just so much easier when they show up, knowing who you are, what you do, and how you do it. Easiest way you can probably achieve this is just by plugging in your VSL and just having a VSL that does all this for them. And then, like I said, with building trust, you want to have as many trust building assets as you can possibly have. Like the answer here is always more. Right? If you have a great Trustpilot page, great, throw that in there. If you have case studies, great, throw that in there. Testimonials, great, throw that in there. Like whatever can build trust with this specific prospect, get it in front of them before the call, gonna make your life a whole lot easier. So just familiarizing with the offer and then building trust. Pretty much it. The second big piece here is iMessaging. And I said iMessaging for a reason, not SMS, because it will convert way better. Now you may be thinking like, Dan, I have an Android. Like, is it really that important? Yes. Oh, Dan, but that would be assuming that most people have iPhones. Most people do have iPhones, especially most people with money. I feel so strongly about this that if you are sitting there with Android selling right now, do whatever you got to do to get an iPhone in your hands. I guarantee you will make more money because of it. It's just like you receive that blue bubble if you're an iPhone owner yourself and you just immediately think more competent, right? So the first goal with the iMessaging is just to get them to respond, because you may not know this, but if you have an iPhone and somebody doesn't have your number saved and they send you a link, the link's not going to show up as clickable unless they first responded to you. It's just going to show up as plain text. So once you get them to respond, I don't care what you got to do. Ask them what CRM they're using. Ask them some random question that, has some relevance, but is really just like fish baiting for a response. And once they do respond, you're sharing your pre-call material, which is familiarizing them with the offer, building trust. Now at ListKit, we've hit 60 to 65% show rates on ice cold traffic, ads plus cold email primarily, with pre-call messaging like this, and over 80% with inbound leads over at ListKit. Same thing at Client Ascension. Bonus, if you want to connect with them on LinkedIn as well, always a good idea. Alex Ramosi talked about this, but he used to have his sales reps reach out on every platform. So he would DM him on Instagram, reach out to him on LinkedIn, email him, text them. And the reason why that was valuable information is because you would get to see what type of person responds on LinkedIn, and then notice post-call, they're more likely to respond on LinkedIn as well. They're just more of a LinkedIn person than the other platforms. So by having that information, not only does trying all platforms give you the highest chance of getting a response, you just have more surface area covered, but also by getting that information, you know which platforms you can leverage more heavily if they're not showing up to the call right away and in follow-up as well. Now, having CTAs, super, super important with your pre-call messaging, because you need to have a conversation with them before they get on the call. Because one of the easiest ways to increase your show rates in the first place is by catching no-shows before they happen and successfully rescheduling them. Because what happens if you have no conversation beforehand and they don't show up, they're probably going to get embarrassed. You're probably going to be pretty pissed off. You're like, dude, where are you at? And they're like, oh shit, I forgot about this. And they're just going to ghost you forever. But the weird thing about show rates, just imagine this for a second. 50% of people, let's say, are just going to show up. And I don't know, 20% of people are just never going to show up. I don't know what's wrong with these people. Maybe they just disqualified themselves with the pre-call material, or they are just funnel hacking, or maybe they're just shit people. So now you have that remaining 30%. Now, with that remaining 30% that are kind of like up in the air, there's typically, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 15, maybe it's 20% of the people that genuinely do want to show up. Maybe they just picked a bad time for them when they initially booked a call, or maybe something genuinely came up. They forgot they had a doctor's appointment. They forgot they had this, they forgot they had that. So the easiest way with that 10, 15, 20% that you can still capture is to just have that conversation with them before the call and successfully reschedule them. Because if you have that 50% that's going to show up regardless, and you capture that additional 10, 15, 20%, cool. Now you're going to be at 60, 65, 70% show rates, which means you're at KPI. If you don't hear anything with multiple call to actions before the call, it's like with our emails, we just give them all the information, make sure they accept the invite and say, hey, respond good to go if you're good to go. With text, like I said, we're trying to bait them into a response. If you hear nothing, no response on any platforms, and the invite is not accepted, just call them the day of. It's going to help you tremendously with rescheduling as many of those people that were going to be reschedules anyways, and doing it successfully. Cool. So let's get into the rest of the sales KPIs. So I talked about show rate a lot, cold traffic 60% plus, inbound 80% plus. If this is below KPI, the lever you pull is working on the process above. So just rewind the video a little bit, make sure you're doing all those things I mentioned. Offer rate, 70 to 80% plus is where you want to be. Now, if you share pricing, plan to share pricing, can work with this person in any capacity, that is an offer. Even if you booked a follow-up call, the person didn't show up, the person didn't get pitched, that is still an offer. So it's a little bit weird. You may be saying, Dan, like, what if I didn't make an offer to a person, but I could have? Yes, that is still an offer. The reason why we track it that way is because it's really more of a marketing metric than a sales metric. Because if you don't track it this way, what's going to happen is you or your salespeople are sometimes going to withhold an offer to protect your own ego. Right? And this is why we value close rate. It's going down here. Close rate is just closed over live calls over offer close rate, which is closed over offers. So it's really just a marketing metric. Doesn't have much to do with sales performance. If this is below KPI, if you were missing this, you need to do more pre-call qualifying. You shouldn't be getting on that many calls with people that could not be a client in any capacity. So the main thing here is just track it correctly. This is where most people mess it up. They're like, I didn't get all the way through the pitch stand, so it's not an offer. That's not true. If you could work with this person in any way, shape, or form, that is an offer, because it's really more of a marketing metric, but it's an important part of the sales process, right? So if you're not hitting it, do more pre-call qualifying. Offer close rate, which is just closes over offers. This should be 40 to 50% plus. On both sales teams I run, we did 50% and 58% respectively in October. And if this is below KPI, you know these people are qualified because you could work with them. So the lever you need to pull is really just diving deep into call reviews, AI research. So I talked about that in previous videos, but just using something like Claude and connecting your recording software into there and just saying, hey, what are the most common reasons that people aren't buying? What are the most common objections? How high of a resolution rate do I have with each of those questions? Just be analytical, watch the game tape, do mock calls, tweak your discovery, tweak your pitch, and objection handling and closing. Like this is all real on-call performance because you know that these people could close. So you'd want to be at 40 to 50% here. Now with close rate, this is one of the golden metrics. Like I talked about, close rate, cash collected, more important than everything else. Shoot for 33% plus. Both of the sales teams I run, the ones I mentioned above, did 37% and 43% respectively. And ironically, the team that had a higher close rate and offer close rate gets more of their leads from cold traffic than the team that has a larger share of their leads coming from organic. And the real difference, you may be saying that, well, that makes no sense. But the difference is that I've had that team for close to 2 years at this point. Most of the people on that team, we've had really low turnover, have been with us for over a year. And these things that I'm talking about, these caller reviews, just consistently iterating, finding the broken link, fixing it, we've been doing it for that long. So it's really just time in the game, guys. This is just living proof that this stuff really, really does work. Now, if you're below KPI here, you need to make sure that your offer rate is not too far off KPI. Then all the other things that you work on for your offer close rate, right? Because this also includes people that did not receive an offer. It's just closes over live calls. That simple. Is really just offer rate and then everything I mentioned with the offer close rate above. Now, cash collected, this is the second golden metric. The KPI for this is simply just more than you did last month. I know you look at these 16-year-olds that make 100K a month, whether that's true or not, and you're like, dude, I'm just not moving quick enough. The reality is, if you can grow your business 5, 10, 2% month over month, and you're in this game for long enough, you're going to make a lot of money. You're going to be successful. So don't stress too much about needing to be at 10K a month, 2 months in, or 30K a month, 5 months in. Just make sure that you're beating yourself the previous month. It's that simple, right? You need to understand, and this is the reason why I like tracking cash collected as opposed to just LTV, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. You need to understand that people do not have an infinite amount of cash. If you can help them, you should be collecting as much of that cash up front as possible. Because if you don't, they will find other dumber ways to spend the money, right? And also by collecting more of that cash up front, you can make your offer more valuable by doing more work. And by the time they make a decision as to whether they want to pay you again, odds are they will have seen value beforehand. So I'm gonna circle back to the LTV, more cash collected, more valuable offers in a second here. But people don't have an infinite amount of money. If they've got cash, if you can help them, try to keep increasing your cash collected, right? And this is total cash collected. This is not like average cash collected on call. This is really just like, am I making more money from sales calls this month? Now, this will apply to 70% of you guys. Check out my full guide on skyrocketing your sales conversions. I think I actually put a different name on that document, but it's in my last video. Dives deep into every single tactic that I'm sharing today, basically showing you discovery, objection handling, follow-up strategies I've used to get to over a 40% close rate. So that was in my last video, step-by-step guide. Click the link below, grab it for free, gonna transform your sales games. Now, let's just get into the last final critical step. So you've tracked everything perfectly, right? Going back up to this, you know what your inputs are, you know your outputs are, you're getting some leads, maybe one content channel is working really well for you. On the sales side, you're hitting that offer rate, you're hitting that show rate, you're hitting that close rate. Awesome. First off, congratulations, right? But how else could you mess this up, right? So in this situation, you're humming along. You're climbing the 30K a month, you're booking 50 calls a month, your show rate is 70%, meaning you had 35 live calls. Your offer rate is 80%, meaning you made 28 offers. And you closed 12 new clients. So you got a 34.3% close rate above that 33% that I mentioned. You've got a 42.9% offer close rate above that 40% that I mentioned. And you collected more cash than you ever have before. At this point, you've got a better sales process than 99% of other companies out there. Genuinely. Only way you can fuck this up and be heading in the wrong direction is if your LTV is too small or your margins suck. So let's just talk about what that means. The concept of lifetime value is super important, but you can't always just increase lifetime value by being one of those people. And this was very famous on Twitter a couple years ago, who's just like, just charge more, bro. And the reason why is because you need to be providing, as a service provider, value to your clients in excess of what you're charging them. And if you're charging just more for the sake of charging more, at some point your offer is not going to be good and your business won't be good. You'll have negative word of mouth. It's just going to backfire, right? The reason why I said you should aim to collect as much cash as possible up front is because by doing that, you can do more work for the client after their initial payment, right? Which is going to give them a better chance of seeing real value before they decide whether they want to pay you or not. But at the end of the day, LTV is more important than sticker price. LTV is more important than the initial cash collected. Both are important, but it's a balance. Like you need to be providing a lot of value. So you can't just be a, yo, just charge more type of guy. But at the same time, more cash collected, good, more LTV, good. The easiest ways to increase your LTV is to have more stuff to sell to your existing clients and by providing enough value to keep them for longer. So more offers your existing clients, more valuable so they stay for longer. Pretty simple. Now, LTV is great, but if your margins suck, you're not taking home any cash. And if you're doing all the work yourself, if you're one of those people scaling up 30K a month and you're getting leads through organic and outbound, odds are is that you are in la la land, right? This is a place where everything looks great when we're talking about numbers like this. Your margins are going to be insanely good here because your costs are lower than they ever will be because you're the one who's doing all the work and you're also getting leads from very cheap channels, right? Like you did not get in the business to do all the work yourself. So don't give yourself too much of a pat on the back if you get here and your margins are great. So keeping in mind the goal here to run a massive business where you have people doing the work for you, you're not doing it all yourself. Ask yourself, will I be able to hire a team with this offer that can do this work for me? And also a sales team to close deals for me and stay above a 50% margin. That's a really good goal for a B2B service-based business like this. And it's pretty simple to increase your margins. You either got to get more from your clients or you got to lower your costs. Awesome. Now, let's say you're conscious of your LTV. It's going up. Your margins are solid. Even if you build in a team, you'll stay above that 50% here. Now, you want to focus on your LTGP, your lifetime gross profit per customer, to customer acquisition costs and that ratio. Because if you're at a 3-to-1 or greater with this ratio, meaning I make 3 times the amount of profit from a client versus what I actually have to spend to acquire another client, you're golden. you're going to have a lot of fun. You're going to make a lot of money. The only thing you need to do at this point is just get more aggressive. Don't think it's small. Pour gas in the fire. So once again, going back to 30K a month, if you're below that, you're likely still in la la land. But at some point, you're going to start signing clients with paid media. And it's likely going to cost you about $3,000 plus or minus $1,500 if you're targeting a small, medium-sized business, let's say under 100 employees inside of the United States. This isn't coming from me. I mentioned Alex Hormozi already multiple times. He, on his 59-hour webinar or whatever it was talking to Alex Becker, who's the founder of Hyros, legend in the space. And Alex was asking him, hey, Alex, kind of confusing both Alex, how can somebody double their ROAS, which is like a very beginner friendly, like broad question that Hormozi's asking for the masses. And Alex Becker basically responded, and it wasn't like, coming up with, this new offer or this new creative or leveraging labor from, this type of place. It was very simple. He was just like, if you want to double your ROAS, you should just focus on increasing your LTV, because I've seen hundreds of thousands of ad accounts and the cost to acquire one of these businesses who hundreds and thousands and really hundreds of thousands of businesses target, like the small and medium-sized business in the US, the customer acquisition cost is actually pretty commoditized. The more data that you look at, which this guy has more data on paid ads than basically anybody else. And he's like, it's about $3,000 plus or minus 1,500. With our coaching program, with our SaaS, we see the same exact thing. The customer acquisition cost is usually somewhere in that 1,500 to 4,500 range, depending on how the month is going. So to make sense out of this ratio real quick, if you have a LTV of $15,000 and your margins are 60%, that means your lifetime gross profit is $9,000. It's how much profit you're getting from this person. So if you're acquiring clients for $3,000 or less, which is definitely achievable just based on what most people typically see, you're golden because your LTGP to CAC ratio is 3 or higher. Awesome. I know, this is a little bit forward looking for most people who are at 30K a month or near that. But when you're growing, climbing the 30K a month or to 100K a month plus after, like the sooner you can start playing the long game, the better. Meaning that even if it takes you 12 to 24 months to realize the full LTV and the full LTGP, it's okay to flow capital, so long as the numbers make sense. Like that's business. And that's literally how all the biggest businesses that you look up to operate. I'm reading Shoe Dog, which is essentially just an autobiography by Phil Knight talking about how he built Nike. And basically every single chapter is like, I can't get enough money from the bank. We need to grow. We need to keep winning. I just view business and life as like, I can't do anything else but, and all he's stressing about is how he can get more money. So like if you have these numbers, even if you're not making that, full LTV, that full LTGP up front, and you have to float some capital, so long as the numbers make sense, if you're in this for the long game, realize it is okay to float capital in order to be able to achieve these things, because that's literally how business operates. So that's it from now. Even with solid tracking, guys, you obviously still need to know how to close cold traffic or none of the numbers will look pretty. So stick around for another video where I broke down how to turn more of your cold leads into paying clients. Click the link to watch now. That one's called How to Close 40% of Your Cold Traffic Leads. It has that step-by-step guide that I mentioned earlier on in the video. Peace.